Nepal women's national football team are set to take on Bangladesh in their second international friendly today. The match, which will be played in Dhaka, is slated for a 5:15 p.m. kickoff Nepal time. Team Nepal had come back from behind to secure a 1-1 draw against the hosts in their first international friendly. Good morning, I'm Prarambha, Dahal. Let's begin with the main stories. Budget of Sudur Paschim province endorsed with majority votes after increasing province assembly development fund to 50 million rupees. Opposition UML and Rashtriya Prajatantra Party boycott the assembly. Development expenditure of the government limited to 58% this fiscal year. Ministries responsible for development works failed to ensure adequate expenditure. India signs an agreement with the United Arab Emirates that will allow it to settle trade in rupees instead of dollars. Two countries also agreed to set up real-time payment link to facilitate cross-border transfers. And Nepal women's national football team take on Bangladesh in the second international friendly today, aimed to improving on weaknesses shown in the first clash. An agreement has been reached to increase the fund for the province assembly member electoral constituency development program to 50 million rupees in Sudur Paschim province. After the provincial assembly members of the ruling coalition decided not to endorse the budget presented for the upcoming fiscal year without amendment, the fund of the province assembly member electoral constituency development program was increased from 30 million to 50 million rupees. An agreement in this regard was reached on Saturday. Sudur Paschim government is currently being led by Nepali Congress. Prior to this, provincial assembly members of the parties in the ruling coalition had expressed their disagreement and decided not to endorse the budget introduced by the government without amendments. The province government was then prepared to increase the fund of the program. Province assembly members of CPN Maoist Center, Nagarik Unmukti Party and CPN Unified Socialist had attended the meeting called by the Chief Minister to seek a consensus on the budget. And today is the last day of the ongoing fiscal year. The government that is criticized for failing to utilize the allocated budget within a year has pledged of spending 80% of the total budget this fiscal year. However, so far the development expenditure has been limited to 58.7%. This has raised questions on work execution as well as the leadership of the government entities. The progress of the Ministry of Physical Infrastructure, which is responsible for national pride projects including the national highways, East-West Electric Railway, Pushpalal Mid-Hilly Highway, among other projects, have been limited to 57.41%. Government officials have predicted a maximum progress of 68%, citing works on projects with multi-year contracts were underway. Likewise, development expenditure of the Ministry of Urban Development that had announced of building new cities in 54 places across the country has been limited to 50%. The Ministry of Tourism has spent 51% of the allocated budget and the Ministry of Drinking Water has spent around 61%. The government's capital expenditure will barely reach 60% even after the inclusion of all the bills submitted by the contractors. The government entities made maximum effort to spend the budget from the 14th of April, the beginning of the Nepali New Year, to 9th of July. The trend of carrying out development works during the end of the fiscal year continued this year as well. The problem in spending the budget has been attributed to indiscriminate allocation of budget on projects without study. Ministers themselves are not satisfied with this trend. However, they are yet to accept their weaknesses. The ministers hope of improvement in the upcoming fiscal year with the inclusion of the provision of halting projects whose works do not complete within the first 3 months of the contract. The government had endorsed a budget of 1,793 billion rupees for the ongoing fiscal year, while development budget was limited to 380 billion rupees. This was later amended and the development budget was decreased to 313 billion rupees, yet the government has failed to utilize the allocated budget. In our public voice segment, we have asked in several provinces regarding ways to preserve heritage sites. Let us now take a look at what they had to say.
Public voice.
हामी सबैजना आफ्नो आफ्नो ठाउँबाट आफै एकजुट भएर उठ्नुपर्छ आफूले गर्ने हो
सरसफाइमा ध्यान दिनु पर्यो
गण्यमान्य बुद्धिजीवी नागरिकहरूले सहयोग गर्नुभयो भनेदेखि यसको रक्षा गर्न सकिन्छ
मूर्तिहरू चोर्ने फुटाउने हैन त्यसलाई बिगार्ने कामहरू गर्नु भएन
लोकल बासिन्दा हामीहरू पनि जताभावी फोहोर नगर्ने
जनचेतना फैलाउनु पर्यो र प्रसार गर्नु पर्यो।
स्थानीय सरकारले नीति नियम बनाउनु पर्यो, त्यसलाई कार्यान्वयन गर्नु पर्यो।
स्थानीय सम्पदा संरक्षणको लागि चाहिँ विशेष ख्याल स्थानीय सरकारले राख्नुपर्ने हुन्छ।
स्थानीय सरकारले गुरु योजना निर्माण गरी संरक्षण गर्नु पर्दछ।
जनचेतनामूलक कार्यक्रमहरू चाहिँ पब्लिकहरुमा ल्याउनु पर्यो, यसको इम्पोर्टेन्स बुझाउन सक्नु पर्यो।
The Janakpur-Jayanagar railway service is to be expanded up to Bhanga of Mahathari today. The railway service will be operated from Kurta in Janakpur up to Bhanga in Mahathari with additional distance of 17 kilometers from today. Prior to this, the railway had been operating from Kurta to India's Jayanagar, which is 35 kilometers. The railway has now been expanded to 52 kilometers. The broad gauge railway had come into operation in the year 2078 as per the Nepali calendar with the assistance of the Government of India. Lalitpur Metropolis is to take actions against entities charging parking fees in an unofficial manner. Now, parking fees cannot be charged inside Lalitpur Metropolis. However, several local entities have been charging parking fees at places including Kumbeswar, Bagalamukhi, Lagankhel and Jaulakhel. Local residents have shared grievances of having to pay 10 rupees per hour for parking motorcycles and 25 rupees per hour for four-wheelers. Lalitpur Mayor Chiribabu Marjan has warned of taking actions against the entities charging parking fees without the approval of the metropolis. It is now time for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion.
Public Pulse.
The question is, what should be done to facilitate health services in remote areas? Your options are A, manage workforce, B, initiative from local level, and C, investment in infrastructures. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B or C and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. Time now for the international news. India has signed an agreement with the United Arab Emirates yesterday that will allow it to settle trade in rupees instead of US dollars during a one-day visit to Abu Dhabi by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Modi was hosted by UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan at Qasr Al Watan Palace in Abu Dhabi. The deal will boost India's efforts to cut transaction costs by eliminating dollar conversions. The two countries also agreed to set up a real-time payment link to facilitate easier cross-border money transfers. The Reserve Bank of India said the two central banks agreed to link India's Unified Payments Interface UPI and UAE's Instant Payment Platform IPP. Such arrangements, which are a growing trend in Asia, typically lower the cost of payments. Now, New Delhi's poorest residents from settlements in the floodplains of the Yamuna River are struggling to survive in roadside tents amid heavy rain and floods. Video footage from yesterday have showed men, women, children and animals who had fled from the slums when the water levels started to surge in makeshift tents on the side of the road, where they now live in fear of snakes and insects. The Yamuna River's levels were at their highest in 45 years this week, following unusually heavy rainfall in New Delhi and hilly northern states, forcing the evacuation of hundreds of people as the river breached its banks. Delhi has recorded rainfall 91% above normal this monsoon season that began the 1st of June. It has received 309 millimeters of rainfall so far in July, which is the third highest for the month for at least 12 years, according to the Indian Meteorological Department. More than 100,000 Israelis took to the streets of Tel Aviv yesterday to protest for the 28th consecutive week against the government's planned judicial overhaul, according to Israeli media. Reuters drone footage showed protesters carrying a big Israeli flag with the word SOS written on it. Others were seen waving Palestinian flags and carrying a banner reading "Occupation Kills." Critics fear the judicial overhaul plan aims to curb court independence by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is on trial for corruption charges that he strongly denies. He says the reforms would balance out branches of the government. Israel's longest-serving leader is in the midst of a domestic crisis, with protests against his religious nationalist coalition's push for judicial reform before parliament disperses for the summer on the 30th of July. A forest fire kept raging in the Canary island of La Palma yesterday, forcing the evacuation of at least 500 people, the authorities have said. The fire started in the early hours of Saturday morning in Pinar de Punta Gorda, a wooded area at the north of the Spanish island, as many European cities brace for extreme heat in the coming week. Many houses were evacuated as the fire advanced, said Sergio Rodriguez, the president of the Cabildo of La Palma. About 200 hectares of land had been affected by the fire. Strong gusts of wind contributed to rapid spread of the fire as well. The cause of the blaze was yet unknown. Authorities in the island were seeking help from other islands in the archipelago such as Gomera and Tenerife. The island experienced its first natural crisis since a volcanic eruption in September 2021, when more than 2,000 buildings were destroyed and many thousands of people were forced to leave their homes when the lava began pouring out of the Cumbre Vieja volcano. Now, dredger boats allegedly used to illegally extract gold were burned down in northern Bolivia in a bid to halt wildcat mining in the Amazon. The police and army conducted a 6-day operation that ended on Friday with the arrest of 57 suspects for participating in alleged illegal gold mining activities and the seizure of 27 dredger boats. Footage shared by the Bolivian government showed the moment officers stormed a dredger boat with miners and workers on it. The boats were then set alight to be destroyed. In response, miners and local residents took to the streets claiming to operate lawfully. The operation took place after indigenous communities reported growing illegal mining in the Beni region, according to the local media. A group of Brazilian school children gleefully remove pieces of plastic and trash on the sand of the Rio de Janeiro beach during an outing to teach them about the significance of protecting the environment. Their school, called Notre Dame, is located on the city's tourist hotspot of Ipanema Beach and has just received a Blue School stamp from the United Nations Cultural Agency UNESCO as part of an initiative to protect the Atlantic Ocean. The stamp recognizes school programs around the world with the aim of protecting oceans. The initiative comes at a time scientists fear that over 90% of the world's marine food supplies are at risk from environmental changes such as rising temperatures and pollution. Alongside NGO Instituto Mar Urbano, Notre Dame School currently offers activities that aim to create awareness among children of different ages to preserve the urban beaches. Rising temperatures in Florida's waters due to climate change have sparked an extreme stressor for the coral reefs, causing bleaching, which has the scientists concerned. The Sunshine State is feeling the heat as scorching temperatures set new records. Just within the last week, as the U.S. South struggles under a heat wave, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association (NOAA) has reported Florida water temperatures in the mid-90s Fahrenheit or 35 degrees Celsius. Normal water temperatures for this time of year should be between 73 to 88 degrees Fahrenheit, according to NOAA. The Florida Keys, home to a vibrant and diverse coral reef tract, are at the center of the crisis. The extreme heat has triggered coral bleaching, where stressed corals expel their colorful algae symbionts, leaving them pale and vulnerable. The coral reefs create homes for millions of species of marine life, support healthy ocean food webs, and protect coastlines, according to the experts. Now, Florida's coral reefs are also a tourist attraction, which helps support the local economy. In response to the crisis, the NOAA and Moat Marine Laboratory and Aquarium are pooling resources, and they say they have come up with new techniques to propagate and transplant healthy corals. They are cultivating coral fragments in nurseries, ensuring their strength and viability before reintroducing them into the ocean. A snake hunter who wrestled a record-breaking 19-foot Burmese python to the ground said that it was the first time he had been scared when capturing a snake. Video taken by his friends showed the python striking at 22-year-old Jake Wallery, who then wrestled it down as it coiled around him. Burmese pythons are an invasive species in Florida that wreak havoc on the indigenous wildlife of the Florida Everglades. Valerie, who was taking a group of friends out on a hunt on early Tuesday morning in South Florida's Big Cypress National Preserve when they spotted the massive python, says he got into snake hunting with his cousin Stephen Gauta for the adrenaline rush and to help with conservation. They have been on the hunt for 3 years and started the Gleeds Boys Python Adventures, which takes novices on hunts. Now, Valerie says the python was humanly killed after its capture and handed over to the Conservancy of Southwest Florida, who measured it at what they said was a world record 19 feet. It also weighed in at 125 pounds. It is now time for the sports news.
Sports news.
Nepal women's national football team are set to take on Bangladesh in their second international friendly today. The match, which will be played in Dhaka, is slated for a 5:15 p.m. kickoff Nepal time. Team Nepal had come back from behind to earn a 1-1 draw against host Bangladesh in the first international friendly. Bangladesh captain Sabina Khatun had put the hosts ahead in the 68th minute before Savitra Bhandari saved Nepal's blushes with an additional time equalizer. Team Nepal are in Bangladesh for 2 international friendly matches that are being taken as preparations for the Asian Games in China. Marketa Vondrousova became the first unseeded player to win the Wimbledon women's singles title as Ons Jabeur's wait for a major still goes on. 24-year-old Vondrousova is ranked 42nd in the world after missing 6 months of last season with a wrist injury. But the Czech handled the nerves of the occasion better than 2023 runner-up Jabeur to win Saturday's final 6-4, 6-4. 6th seed Jabeur, who is 28 years old, has now lost all 3 major finals she has played in and was in tears at the end. Vondrousova, who came to Wimbledon as a fan last year wearing a cast after a wrist injury, fell flat on her back as the magnitude of what she had achieved sank in. After sharing a warm embrace with Jabeur at the net, she knelt on the grass again and looked close to tears as she drew the acclaim of the center court crowd. Then, as in tradition these days, she clambered up to the players' box to hug her team and family, including husband Stephen, who arrived in London to watch the final after previously staying at home in Prague to look after their pet cat. By contrast, Jabeur looked heartbroken as she sat on her chair with her head bowed down. Meanwhile, in the men's final, Carlos Alcaraz of Spain takes on Novak Djokovic of Serbia at 6:45 p.m. Nepal time this evening. Arsenal have confirmed the signing of England midfielder Declan Rice from West Ham United for £100 million plus £5 million in add-ons. The Gunners' announcement comes after the 24-year-old issued an open letter to Hammers fans saying how tough a decision it had been to leave the club. Rice has signed a 5-year contract with Arsenal in a deal which has the option of a further year. Rice has moved on after captaining West Ham to the Europa Conference League title last season. He is Arsenal's 3rd major signing this summer as they look to go one better than their second-placed finish in the Premier League last season. His arrival follows the recruitment of Germany international Kai Havertz from Chelsea in a £65 million deal and Netherlands defender Jurrien Timber from Ajax for a fee which could rise to £38.5 million. Arsenal succeeded with their 3rd bid for Rice, having had 2 earlier offers rejected, which were below West Ham's £100 million asking price. Premier League champions Manchester City withdrew from trying to buy the player after they had a £90 million offer turned down. The initial fee for Rice equals the £100 million City paid for Aston Villa for Jack Grealish in the season of 2021. Now, Argentina forward Lionel Messi has signed for American MLS side Inter Miami on a deal that runs until the year 2025. 36-year-old 7-time Ballon d'Or winner Messi left French champions Paris Saint-Germain at the end of the 2022-23 season. Inter Miami co-owner David Beckham said the signing was a dream come true. Messi, who has not previously played for a club outside of Europe, added that it was a fantastic opportunity and together they will continue to build the project. On securing the services of a player expected to win another Ballon d'Or this year, David Beckham said that 10 years ago, when he started his journey to build a new team in Miami, he had said that he dreamed of bringing the greatest players in the world to the amazing city. Messi will be available to play for Miami against Liga MX side Cruz Azul on 21st of July in their opening match of the League's Cup. Messi won the last of his 7 Ballon d'Or awards for the world's best player in 2021 and could win it again later this year after leading Argentina to World Cup success in Qatar in 2022. He scored 32 goals in 75 matches for PSG and ended last season with 16 goals and 16 assists in Ligue 1. Messi joined the French side in 2021 after spending 21 years with Barcelona. Messi is Barca's record scorer with 672 goals and won 10 La Liga titles, 4 UEFA Champions Leagues and 7 Spanish Cups. And now before we wrap up, here's a look into the top stories one more time. Budget of Sudur Pasim province endorsed with majority votes after increasing province assembly development fund to 50 million rupees. Opposition UML and Rashtriya Prajatantra Party boycott the assembly. Development expenditure of the government limited to 58% this fiscal year. Ministries responsible for development works failed to ensure adequate expenditure. India signs an agreement with the United Arab Emirates that will allow it to settle trade in rupees instead of US dollars. Two countries also agreed to set up real-time payment link to facilitate cross-border transfers. And Nepal women's national football team take on Bangladesh in the second international friendly today, aimed to improving on weaknesses shown in the first clash. That is all for the moment. Our next English bulletin is at 6 p.m. Thank you for staying with us. Have a beautiful day ahead.